Welcome to the Richmond Lowdown. I'm Doris Ashbrook.
And I'm Don Nordstrom. For a long time, we have sort of gotten off topic and decided somewhere along the way to yell at you people and tell you to be responsible for yourselves. And as promised, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with our sister city, Scum Hollow. And we haven't heard from those people in a long time. And I think one of the things that I always thought when I first moved here about Richmond is there should be some way for tourism in this city to become almost an industry to bring people in. If you can bring people into Holland, Michigan to look at some tulips, certainly you can bring people in here to look at how corruption works in a city and what happens when you have corruption and how the city deteriorates. But you can also have them come around and look at some of the wonderful architecture that we have in this town that is, honest to God, a gift. You don't find this everywhere in the United States. We, a couple of years ago, brought somebody in from the East Coast who was an author who has done a lot of work on old homes and rehabilitating old homes, and tourism has actually become part of their town. And we brought him out here, and he was amazed at the amount of homes that we have and that the architecture that we have in this town still being standing from the 1800s and 1900s. And I had always thought that this would be a good way to, you know, there's a town called Frankenmuth, Michigan, which is a bunch of German farmers that got together and said, you know what, we need to find a way to bring some more dollars into our town. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop this town as a German village, which they did. And they put a facade on the downtown and made it, look like with the arches and stuff, and made it look like a German village, and started a couple of breweries up there because you can't have a lot of Germans.
Not without a beer garden.
And then they had the bratwurst and the nutwurst and all the German stuff and this house and started having these festivals for Oktoberfest in this German town. And literally, people came by the thousands up to Frankenmuth, which is in the middle of nowhere, by the way, and I've been there. And what they were known for is their Christmas store. And this made Hobby Lobby or any of them, look like nothing. This was just a whole store that was built, designed for nothing but Christmas, 364 days out of the year. In fact, the only day that they were closed was
Christmas.
Christmas, which never made any sense to me, but, this is America. So
What if somebody needed a last minute ornament?
you go to Walmart, which is the real Christmas. And it always has amazed me that we never did anything with our tourism bureau. But Scum Hollow, they found a way to deal with what they had to actually get people to come to their town.
Oh God, Don's talking about Scum Hollow. I'm full of fear and trepidation.
As you should be. So we always talk to General Billy Joe, and he's here today. And General Billy Joe is going to tell you how they capitalized on what they needed to get tourists in their town. So, General, add it to you. It's always good to be here in this wonderful city to see the kind of stuff you all got here to know. Well, he wanted here today to talk to you about what happened to us down in Scum Hollow. And not much ever happens down there, but anyway, we had a family, the Thomases, that went away on vacation. And they got in the old family truckster, and they proceeded to go to Yosemite Park out there in I think it's in some state out there, but they went to Yosemite and decided that they were going to have this vacation and that they was going to camp. And they thought it was a great idea. And everybody thought it was a great idea, but Fran didn't think it was a good idea. But her husband Leroy he decided it was gonna be a great idea. Kids are gonna get a great education, they're gonna fish and hunt and do all the things you do out there.
Meet Yogi, I'm sure.
And meet Yogi the bear, yes, indeed. And, who's the bear that stops all the forest fires? What was his name?
Smokey.
Smokey. I think Smokey is like a cousin to Yogi. Yeah, I think he, well, maybe not. Anyway, so they all went out there and they took the truckster and they decided they was going to camp by this creek. And there was a creek, big creek, I mean a huge creek down in these mountains and stuff. And they set up their camp there. And so Leroy took Ardeen and Biff, the two kids, out to do a little fishing one day. And Fran, she was sort of left behind. And she had nothing to do out there but sitting on a camp chair, which she did. And the skaters got pretty tough out there, so she went inside and closed. What?
Skeeters?
The skaters. They're those things that bite you. It's like ticks,
Okay.
but they fly. Do ticks fly? I don't know. Anyway, so they all got out there, and they was a fishing away somewhere, and Fran just got inside the tent, and she was sitting there, just just drinking a Kool-Aid and reading her Bible, as she should, out there communing with nature. And all of a sudden, the flap of the tent opened up, and in walks this beaver. I mean, this big old hairy beaver just come a walking into the tent and just commenced to looking at Fran, and Fran was horrified. She didn't know what the hell to do. So she reached into the cooler and found out that they had some carrots in there and grabbed a hold of a carrot and handed it to the beaver, and that damn beaver ate it and just smiled at Fran and walked out of the tent. And so Leroy and the kids came home and they didn't have too much uh, to talk about with fishing, so they all stopped at McDonald's and got some fish sandwiches on the way home and figured it was just as good. So, yeah, that was what they said. It was tough catching the fries. That's what they said. Just getting them fries on the hook was tough, getting them on. Anyway, so they was in the tent, and Frank says, "You're not going to believe what happened to me today." And they all said, "Well, what happened to you today?" She said, "I was sitting here on the chair reading my Bible, and in walked this beaver." And they went, "Sure it did. What's in that Kool-Aid, Fran? You got Uncle Tom's special brew going in that Kool-Aid for you?" And she said, "No, I'm just sitting here." And the beaver came. And then what did the beaver do? I gave him a carrot, and he walked out, and he actually smiled at me and left. And he was kind of polite about the whole thing, if you must know. And they all said, "We don't believe me." And they ate their fish and stuff and went to sleep that night. And the next day, the old dad, Leroy, said, "We're going to go out today on a camp, around a hike. They're going to take a hike around Yosemite." And so they did. And Fran said, "Hell, yeah, I'm just going to sit here." And she did. And started reading her Bible again inside the tent. And along around 11 o'clock, in walks that same damn beaver.
How'd she know it was the same one?
It had a little bit of the carrot around its whiskers. And so anyway, she grabs a hold of another carrot and commences to give the beaver carrot. He just smiled and just walked out. Well, this goes on for 5 days. And nobody believes Fran. And they finally said, "Well, we think we've spent enough here in Yosemite. We're going to go back to Scum Hollow, where things are normal." And they're packing up the tractor and getting everything ready and whatnot. And they got all the doors open. They're putting stuff into the back of it and getting the tent put down and all this kind of stuff. And they all said, "Well, let's get in the car and go home." And sitting in that car in the back seat was that damn beaver. So Fran had to go into the back and unpack everything, get in the cooler, and they trying to entice the beaver to come out of the truckster. But he already had his seatbelt fastened, and they figured, well, they wasn't going to get him out of the car now. So they all piled into the car, and they said, "We'll just go down and talk to the ranger in Yosemite and see if he can just get this beaver out of the car." So they all left the place, and they never did find the ranger. And they said, "Well, we'll stop someplace." And Leroy, he wasn't one to take any time. If you had to go to the bathroom, you used the McDonald's container. You didn't stop. He was, if he could get gas piled into the thing on the way there without stopping, he'd have done it. But they couldn't find a ranger, couldn't find a cop, couldn't find nothing. drove all the way through back to Scum Hollow with that damn beaver in the car. And as you know, in the backyard, they took a whole bunch of tarps at one time. They dug out a big hole and they put the tarps on the bottom that were waterproof and they filled it up and they had themselves a swimming pool. And I wouldn't have swum in it. It was the green stuff that bothered me on the top of it, but they all thought it was okay and whatnot. And they all got home. Sure enough, that beaver unlatched its little thing for the seat belt and got out of the car, walked around the backyard, and jumped right in the pool. So they thought, well, we're just gonna go home, go get Sheriff Tom to come down here and either shoot the damn thing or somehow get the forest people to come out and do something with this thing or animal control and get this beaver out of their yard. So they call Sheriff Tom and he comes out and says, what's going on? He said, well, we was out in Yosemite and this beaver took a strong liking to us. And Sheriff Tom said, the beaver? Yeah. Well, where is this beaver? He's right in the backyard. And he said, have you been getting in that Kool-Aid that your Uncle Zeke has that special formula for it? No, I swear to you, I haven't had a drink. Just got in from Yosemite this morning. And Sheriff Tom goes backyard. Sure enough, here's that damn beaver just doing the backstroke in there, what they call the swimming pool. And he's just happier than hell, whatnot, and comes out of things, start walking towards Fran. Fran grabs another carrot, gives it to the beaver, back into the pond to go, just a swimming away. So the sheriff says, well, I don't want to kill him. We'll get the animal control people. We'll get Bob out here and see what he can do about it. But Bob was on vacation that week. So they figured, well, we'll just go to the A&P or to the store and the Piggly Wiggly. That's what they have down there, it's a Piggly Wiggly. And they went down to the Piggly Wiggly and got themselves a whole bunch of bags of carrots for the beaver. So they go on. And in the meantime, how I was getting to the story about doing something about getting tourists into your town, they was trying to find a way to look around their town and find something about their town that would draw people into it. And they was having a tough time. They really was. Uh, they had a great restaurant there called the Angry Angus, and they thought, well, maybe we could.
The Angry
The
Angus.
Angry Angus, yeah. The
Uh,
home of the Angry Angus burger. And it was one of them all-you-can-eat places for $12.95. And they thought maybe they could bring. So anyway, they commenced to putting a bunch of the townspeople together with a bunch of the people who were in business there, and they were having a meeting and whatnot. And they had taken a break for their meeting, and Sheriff Tom just happened to be outside that day, and they were walking and said, hi, Sheriff Tom, how are you? And he said, well, I'm fine. And who was across the street but Fran? Fran was a standing right out there by the Casey's or whatever they call the stores by you, a little gas station type store. And she was standing there. She said, "Well, hi, Sheriff Tom." And he, "Well, hi, Fran. Say, how's your beaver doing?" And she said, "Well, just fine, thank you." And he said, "Well, do you mind if I come out a little bit later on and take a look at your beaver?" And she said, "Why, no, come on out." And he said, "Well, I'll be out there somewhere around 2 because I want to get a good look at that beaver." And she said, "Well, that'll be fine, Sheriff." And all the people are looking at Fran's a beaver. What? Well, as luck would have it, a family had stopped off the interstate to get gas. And in it was two guys, they were brothers, and they was hearing this and saying, "Beaver, they're good." So they walked over to Sheriff Tom and said, "Excuse me, uh, I hear that you're going to go out and take a look at Frank's beaver." He said, "Well, yes, I am. I'm going to go out there a little bit later." And he said, "Well, could me and my brother go out there and see your beaver?" And he said, "Well, absolutely. Just a minute. Hey, Fran." Fran said, "Yes, Sheriff Tom. I got some guys from out of town that'd like to see your beaver too. Can they come over?" And she said, "Why, sure they can." And so they all said to their wives, "Listen, we're going to take you down to the Angry Angus over there to get one of them burgers or whatnot, but we got some sightseeing to do here." And they said, "What are you going to go see?" "Well, we don't know yet, but we're going with the sheriff, so it can't be illegal." So they all went out and got in the car and whatnot, and 2 o'clock rolled around and went out to see Fran's beaver. And they came back and they said, you know what? When we get home, we ought to tell our neighbors how we all went out to see Franz Beaver and see if they'd be dumb and see if they'd be stupid to see if they'd go along with the joke. And when they got back, we'd actually tell them what the beaver really was. So, and this is how it all started. And so today, they never did go out and get Franz Beaver. They just kept it in that pool. And every weekend, it's mostly guys that come out. We don't know why, but it's mostly guys that come into town. And they all come out and say, yeah, could you tell us how to go out and see Franz Beaver? Well, sure, you just go down Highway G until you get to the T in the road, and then you take a hard right. Not an easy right, a hard right until you get to the Iron Bridge. And once you get over the Iron Bridge, it's a tad down the road from there. And I mean, pretty soon they had arrows pointing as to how to get out here. The problem that they was having is what kind of novelty do you put into the toy store? You know, if you go into like the Indian territories, you get little tom toms
And
and
rubber
and
tomahawks?
rubber tomahawks and
Yeah,
you get bows and arrows. What do you give and what do you sell as a beaver?
I don't know.
Well, that's that's the meeting they're having right now, and they're trying to decide exactly what it is that they should have to entice more tourists to come out here and see Franz Beaver.
Does it involve the whole Chamber of Commerce in Scumville?
Oh yeah, and the school board they're in on it too. One of the undertakers in town he wanted to get in on it, and a couple of the doctors in town wanted to be able to certify that it really was a beaver.
Okay.
So anyway, that was why we had this show today because we want to give all you people in Richmond the what was that?
Don't worry. Just keep going. I want to hear this story to the end.
I thought maybe there was a beaver bulletin coming
No, no,
through or
no, no,
something that the
no,
beaver had died or
no, no,
something.
no, no, no.
Well, anyway, so they want me to come to Richmond and tell you people how to get some tourists in. And I look at it this way: if you got all these old houses here and that kind of stuff, it ought to be pretty easy for you because all we needed at Scum Hollow was a beaver.
I am so sorry, listeners. Oh,
I already told you
okay.
that Scum Hollow is going to be one of the more interesting uh, people, towns that we can talk to you about.
I'm sure there's a lesson there.
There is a lesson there. I don't know what it is, but it sure beats talking about politics and people being lazy and whatnot. If they had that much success in town with
A hairy beaver?
a hairy beaver, I didn't want to say it, but
I had to, I know.
if they had
Yeah.
that much success, how many hairy beavers could we get in this town to? It was just a thought. So for all of you people at the Tourism Bureau, for all of you person, you might want to consider that as something you may want to look into. Uh,
You know, there's a platform out in the middle of Springwood that used to be like a diving platform. And I think that one could build a boat-like thing around it and we could have gambling there.
True. One other thing you might want to consider, and this may be an offshoot of Scum Hollow, that if they've sort of got the beaver thing captured pretty much,
I think they've got
I
a
think this
got
town
that one.
this
Yeah.
town certainly could qualify because most of the money in this town seems to go to the same 15 people all the time. And if they can go to Scum Hollow and see the beavers, then certainly we got 15 pricks for them to be able to take a look at.
Oh God.
Too much information?
There is.
Every once in a while, Doris does get speechless.
I wish that you could hear me blush.
Not really, because it's all true. Every once in a while, you got to sit back and take things, with a grain of salt. even what goes in our town or what goes on in this country, you know, things could be worse. I don't know how, but they could get worse. The only thing that we're trying to say to you people about what goes on in your lives is at some point you have a responsibility to do something about the town that you live in, or you're going to be known as the home of the hairy beaver. And I don't think you want to end up like that. And the easiest way to change things is to actually get together with your neighbors and your community and actually make a change.
Yeah, and have fun while you're doing it.
Exactly.
Talk
Enjoy
to
it.
talk to each other, you know.
This is, it sounds like a lot of hard work, and at some point it becomes work. But if you can keep it light and make it, fun, you still can get things done because it is so bad right now that we have nowhere to go but up. And I think that's the key. When you say it can't get much worse, I always say that, but then it always seems to get worse. This city has had 40 years of a downhill slide that has to start somewhere to come back. You know, bringing people into this town, we once did a tour, and one of the people who was on the Preserve Richmond board was actually going through the city with this person and saying, "Well, you see this store here? That used to be one of the greatest restaurants you ever ate in your life. And next to it used to be another. Well, they knocked that one down because that thing just fell apart. And the one next to it, well, I can't remember what was in that. That's been vacant for so long. And that this one here, this woman used to make the greatest pies you've ever had in your life. These pies were so good." And the guy said, "Where's she now?" "Oh, I don't know. Just went out of business." And the guy said, "What, do people stop eating pie in this town? What happened?" "Don't know. Just one day, she's gone." And and this guy looked at this town and thought to himself, "You've got to be kidding me. This looks like an aftershot of World War II in Bremen. The buildings are all bombed out. Nobody's in there. You've got a downtown area that nobody's walking down the streets. And it's sad. It really is. Because the cornerstone of every town in America is its downtown area. You ask any thriving community, and if they have a thriving downtown, you've got a thriving community. Not here. We've got a strip mall.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, if you drive just a few miles west, go to Cambridge City.
Exactly.
Little tiny town, clean, things to, people are there, walking around, things to do, you know, not Richmond.
As bad as things are in Chicago,
Mm.
okay, the new murder capital of the United States. The last I heard over the Memorial Day weekend, there was 30 some people shot. I don't know how many of them were killed. One young girl was in a car and she was shot and killed while she was sitting in a car. I mean, as bad as that town is, they've got a thriving downtown. And you have neighborhoods all over the United States that, are not the best neighborhoods you'd like to be in. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the town or the rest of the city, can't be something different than that. That Rob Emanuel can't find a way to clean up his own city is just amazing to me. But apparently he doesn't know how or doesn't want to or just wants to have a war-free zone in his city. But if you go downtown Chicago, and I'm from Chicago originally, so the downtown area is unlike anything you've been to. It's not New York.
No, it's not New York.
It's not Milwaukee.
I hope so.
But there's something about Chicago and its neighborhoods. I mean, if you want good Swedish food, you go to Andersonville. If you want good Mexican food, you go down to the near south side and you get the greatest Mexican food you ever had. A little bit farther west, you go into the Italian village and get
And the
to
Polish one. Yeah.
every neighborhood is almost unique unto itself. And on every corner, on every street, there is some sort of a store.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a laundromat, there's something, if you've got a whole block full of apartments, on each corner, there are stores, just to anchor people, to give them stuff to do in the neighborhood. In fact, the federal government came out and gave them a lot of money when the housing debacle happened, and they decided that they were gonna tear down this one whole block. And they did a whole bunch of thinking about it, proposed plans and did all this kind of stuff and built these beautiful low-rise buildings. And it was a whole block of apartments and condos and all that kind of stuff. And the whole block sat there and they couldn't understand what went wrong. And they got together finally with the neighborhood and said, what do we do wrong? And they all said, where's the stores? And they said, what stores? You've got stores all over the place. But there's no stores in that building. And they said, well, but you got stores all in, wait, not kind of stuff. So because this company that they had hired was from California, they didn't understand that. So what did they do? They dedicated a couple of the corner, whatever they were, made them into stores, just like that. Within a year, every place was taken in the city, or in this area. It's that kind of thing that if you're gonna leave your development to people from California, that's the kind of stuff you get. If you're gonna leave your city to the devices of a government that is only concerned about the government surviving, then you're gonna get what you get. And the bad thing about it is, you might end up being the home of the beaver. Or in our case, maybe the home of the pricks. I guess that's about all I gotta say today. I'm ready for a nap. How about you, Doris?
Oh, yeah.
I'm done for the day. Have a good day and keep your spirits up.
Bye.